you for making time tonight to attend the Midtown Ventura Community Council General Meeting for July 14th, 2022. I'm Gregg Mansfield, the chair of the Midtown Ventura Community Council. It's great to see some new faces tonight. And before we get started, I'd like to remind our attendees that we treat our guests with dignity and respect. And also as a reminder, and Dan already brought it up, please mute your microphone so we can better hear the speakers. If you're not a member of the MVCC, I encourage you to go to midtownventura.org and sign up to be a member. Joining is free and you'll receive our monthly newsletter. Also tonight, if you have a question for a guest, please put the question in the chat panel and we'll ask it once the speaker is finished with their presentation. Vice Chair Eric Berg is working the chat tonight and we'll make sure your question is asked. Eric or the speaker may call on you to clarify the question, or if maybe you have a follow-up. So we'll get going with our agenda. Let me start adding a couple people. So starting off tonight's agenda is public safety report, and we're joined by Commander Ed Caliento, who is the watch commander for the Midtown area. Commander Caliento is going to give us an update on any issues going on in Midtown. And if you don't mind, if you have any answer, how's the response been to the relaunching of the Neighborhood Watch program? So Ed, if you could take it away, appreciate it.
Certainly. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. First off, I'll answer the second question first. Things are going really well with the relaunching of the new Neighborhood Watch. All we've been asking is people get together and meet with us prior to officially launching. So obviously that's caused some difficulty with trying to get everyone together in an actual venue. So it's gone a little bit slower than we thought it would be, but that was kind of to be expected, trying to get neighborhoods and people together. So other than that, though, it's been really well attended, those that have gone, and I think it's going to be a great program once you get up and running. Just to kind of go through the, did you guys lose me on the camera? Or can you still see me?
No, we have you.
Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what happened in Midtown crime-wise. We've had 12 thefts, which does not include shoplifts. We had 7 aggravated assaults, and I'll go into those a little bit. 4 thefts or burglaries from vehicles, 2 commercial burglaries, and 1 motor vehicle theft. What I'd always like to caution when I talk about this kind of stuff, the biggest thing and the biggest thing everyone can do to protect themselves is make sure that their doors and windows of their vehicle are locked. Make sure that the car is parked in a well-lit area if it's possible. Obviously, you know, we don't all have garages. Ideally, would be parked in the garage. If you do have a bicycle, we've had a lot of bicycle thefts this month, and a lot of those were e-bikes. What we've been finding is people get these new great e-bikes. They're very expensive, but they don't write down or take a picture of their registration or the serial number. It makes it very difficult for us to actually return these bikes. So if you do have a bike, whether it be an e-bike or a regular bike, I know mountain bikes can be $10,000. Make sure that you've registered them. You can do that online through the Ventura Police Department, but at the very least, make sure you have that serial number, because then we can put it into a stolen system, and our officers encounter people with multiple bikes all the time. If that serial number is on or in our system, we can get that bike back to you. The aggravated assaults, in this case, most of these are people that know each other. We had one that seemed a little scary for me because it was a stranger one. It was on Main and Peking, so kind of in an area that Main and Peking parking lot is a little bit shady parking lot anyway. A male suspect struck a victim in the right ear. Didn't rob the victim, just struck the victim. To me, that one, again, is a little bit scary because there was no reason for it. All the other aggravated assaults were either domestic incidents or people that knew each other that were fighting. It doesn't make it better. It just, you know, it's not some sort of random attack. Our 1 stolen vehicle, again, I always like to remind people, make sure you don't leave an extra set of keys in your vehicle. Make sure your vehicle is locked. Don't keep anything of value in your vehicle. And that's how that vehicle was stolen. Was, it sounds like, according to this report, that there was an extra key in there. That is what we've had.
Perfect. Thanks, Edward. We have one question in the chat, and if anybody does, I see we have a hand raised too. The chat is Bobby asks, who do we contact for the Neighborhood Watch program?
It's going to be our community outreach specialist, and I will put her email. Would it be best if I put it in here? Emily
Yeah,
Graves
if
is
you
her
put it in
name.
the chat, I think that's
Okay.
perfect.
I will do that right now.
Thank you. And I see Marilyn has her hand raised. Marilyn, do you have a question?
Yes, a quick question. I just wondered there might be a shortage of police officers because there's been so many wild speeding motorcyclists and cars, in and out of lanes that have seemed to be driving unsafely. And maybe it's post-COVID rage, I don't know, but your feedback on that, please.
So we actually, we've been doing very well in the city of Ventura when it comes to police officers. So there isn't a lack of officers. Oftentimes there is a mixture of just the cop is not there right when you need them, when you see them or hear them. There's also a perception issue. We've gotten this a lot where people say people speed up and down my street. So we will go and do a speed study. And we find that it's not so much people are speeding up and down the street because we're standing or sitting. It seems like cars are moving faster. But there has been an increase across the city and the state when it comes to road rage incidents. People are shorter temper. So if you are out there driving, please, somebody cuts you off, they cut you off, get home safely. It's not worth getting in an altercation that could turn dangerous.
I think on Nextdoor too, they've said that if people see a police vehicle parked somewhere, it tends to make them be more obedient. Like I've seen that on the way between Ventura and Santa Barbara. A police officer just parked on the side of the road. It makes people be more obedient. But I know you guys are short staffed when it comes to being everywhere. Thank you for all your service.
Thank you.
We have another question in the chat from Karen. Asked, there's a lot of concern recently about gun violence. Ventura is pretty safe, but can you give us your perspective?
So, yeah, I mean, if you're watching the news, it's terrible. We've got these mass shootings all over the place across our country. I think, we have been very safe here. We do have a not too big of a gang presence, but it does every once in a while erupt into violence with shootings. We haven't had one of these sort of mass shooting incidents. We did have 3 people get shot by one individual in May, and we ended up taking that person into custody. However, if you're talking about like the school shootings, that kind of stuff, we've been doing a lot of training. Uvalde has just really come out in the news. We just spent our last training day going over with the patrol officers and all detectives about how to react to an active shooter. It's an unfortunate event that we all pray it does not happen in our city or in this county. But as we all know, it's happened before at Borderline and other places. So I think, the best thing we can do is we've been keeping our officers well trained. We've keeping our finger to the pulse of the news. If we do get any sort of information about somebody that might be a little bit red flag where we need to go out and do some extra, maybe go get guns from people, we do have a pretty robust group that does that. It was the street crimes unit, and it's now where I used to do, but now it's under Sergeant Accarelli. So if we get tips, if someone says, hey, my neighbor is acting a little crazy or my family member, we will go and investigate that. And if need be, we'll take guns. We have a pretty easy way to get guns from people in this state. We do need to have some probable cause to do it, but it is better than it is in a lot of other states.
Okay, I think that's it in the chat. And so thank
Sorry,
you for
Greg, I had a quick
addressing
question.
it.
I was
Okay.
muted real quick. I'm just curious with the statistics. I'm always kind of curious when we get these reports. Are you seeing any broader trends in crime statistics this year that you can answer about?
So actually, we've had a couple of near homicides, but we haven't had a homicide yet this year. So our statistics actually look pretty good. Overall, if you start looking at national statistics, it looks pretty bad. I can't remember the number, but it's been like every day there's been a mass shooting. They also changed the definition of mass shooting. That's 4 or more people shot. They also, if you read the news, a lot of times they're not talking about gangs anymore. If you really kind of dig down into that article, you'll see that the mass shooting really was a gang fight and 2 different gang members shot at each other. I think the one that we're all concerned about the most is that active shooter incident at a shopping mall, at a school, at a church. That's the thing that really keeps me up at night. I think that's the thing that our officers think about the most. I think that's where the public really is concerned. That is trending up, unfortunately, but nothing necessarily in the city of Ventura.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it. As I say, we're on time certain for Assemblymember Bennett to speak at 7:25. So, and it's nice to see you. Thank you for coming out. And we'll see you in September. We're dark for August. So
Okay,
enjoy
great.
the fair.
Thank you very much. I'll be working. If
Okay.
you come say hi.
Okay, we will. We'll definitely do it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. So tonight's spotlight on nonprofits is the Ribbons of Life Breast Cancer Foundation. We're excited to be joined by the nonprofit's president, Sylvia Rosolek. The organization's goal is to provide breast cancer education, advocacy, and emotional and social support within Ventura County. The group offers an independent breast cancer resource center at 1500 Palma Drive in Ventura. That's over in the industrial area over there. Without taking too much of her presentation, please welcome Sylvia. Sylvia, if you can unmute.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity. This Ribbons of Life is so close to my heart. I joined right when it started in 2002, and Greg already mentioned our mission statement, so I won't repeat that, but Lisa Bretto is the founder of Ribbons, and she was diagnosed with breast cancer at Ventura College. I mean, when she was attending Ventura College. And so she started a small group to support students like herself. And then in 2007, we became, through our Lisa's efforts and all the volunteers, hard work, we became a nonprofit, a 501c3, and changed our name to Ribbons of Life. I came for support and stayed to help other women because I could just see the impact that it was having on our community, that we could be there for them. In 2014, we were able to realize our vision of opening a resource center, and that's on Palma. And prior to that, we were working from our cars and our homes and little coffee shops where we would meet women. So now we have a beautiful, warm, loving office where we can welcome them in with their family member or other support person and answer their questions, offer them resources, give them guidelines and questions to ask their doctor. And we also give each new member a care bag that was made by a breast cancer survivor. And we call them survivor thrivers because we encourage women to just continue to thrive with your life. In 2014 and 2004 is when we started our breakfasts. Those are our monthly meetings in 2004, and we call them Breast Fests. At that time, we were meeting at Hill Street Cafe and different restaurants, and now we're at Denny's, and we meet every month. You could find us there, second Saturday at 8:30, and it's a place, opportunity for women to come they find us through word of mouth, or they're referred by their doctor, and they'll meet 25 to 30 women who, in all stages of their breast cancer journey. Some who have gone through their treatment, but continue to come because of the camaraderie and to be able to help other women too. We always have a professional speaker talking about a relevant topic. We have a gift for our breast cancer survivors, and it's just a wonderful time. In our last meeting last Saturday, we had an oncology nutritionist talk to us from the cancer center here. She works at both Ventura and Oxnard. And it was just, we learned a lot and it was a lot of fun. In 2019, we were fortunate enough to have the Ventura Women Harley Davidson riders hold fundraisers throughout the year. And we were able to open a little art studio. And that's another room near our office and where we have we offer art classes. One of our survivors is a watercolor artist and she teaches classes. Or the women might be making jewelry or crocheting. It's just an opportunity for them to get together, talk to others, and create something beautiful with their hands. In June, we offer a scholarship for a survivor who would like to continue her education. And we are the it started in 2005, and we're the only known academic scholarship available to a breast cancer survivor in the nation. And I was the first recipient. So we do that every year so a woman could do something positive for herself as she's moved through her treatment and she wants to start thinking of something else. We survive through community donations, individual donations, fundraisers, businesses and organizations. And we have a Keep the Money Local campaign, which guarantees a donor that the funds they donate stay in our community and help the women of our community in Ventura County. Our logo is kind of unusual. It's not the pink ribbon, it's a red heart that surrounds a red ribbon, because we believe that cancer, breast cancer, goes to the heart of every woman and their family or loved ones. And it really takes the community to pull together and help them get through this journey. We hope you will visit us on our website. It's ribbonsventura.org for more information. I'd love to talk to you or get you brochures. We are here for our community, and we're also on Facebook. So do we have any questions?
Eric, you want to take it away? I'll get one quick question. Do you view your group as a support group and give people advice, or they can get knowledge? How do you see this kind of a dual role for your group?
Yes, it is. And that's why the professional speakers come in, where they will get educated. And we have also an advisory board. If we have any questions, we have a lawyer, we have the medical health professionals. So we are up to date. And we also I pick up materials from the cancer centers and have it available at our Breast Fest each month. And yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thanks so much, Sylvia. And thanks, Greg, for putting the information in the chat. If anybody's interested, the links to both the website and the Facebook are in the chat. You've got several thank yous from Jeff and Karen and Christie's in the chat as well. If there's any questions, feel free to dump them in there. But thank you so much, Sylvia. No questions at this time. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Oh, quick question. Okay, Christine asked, do local companies do any kind of donations for the Breast Fest?
Not for the Breast Fest women, but women, usually come, and Denny's is pretty reasonable. But we do receive donations to be able to have keep our office so we can meet our women. And the Ventura Fire, they sell the pink T-shirts every October, and they donate the funds to us. And we have different small businesses that have little fundraisers. In October is really busy with businesses that decide to give us like 20% of their sales or different things. So it really is amazing to be supported, especially after 20 years, to be supported by the community.
Awesome. Marilyn, I see your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you for all that you're doing. I just want to know the location of your art studio.
Yes, 1500 Palma Drive.
Okay. I guess you did say that. Thank you.
Yes, near Burlington.
Uh-huh.
I put it in the chat too. Christine had another follow-up question is, what other community organizations contribute?
Community organizations. Let's
Oh, she
see.
answered. You answered it already. We're
Okay.
good. Thanks, Christine. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. I think we're on track, Greg. In time.
Yeah, we are actually a little ahead of time. So
Thank you.
we appreciate everybody keeping in. And thank you so much. Can I know I'm going to ask a silly question on this one. I know that men can also get breast cancer. Is it open to men, or is it strictly for women?
Yes, it is. And we did have one man come through, and he attended our meetings. Monthly meetings are amazing. And yeah, we provide support to whoever comes.
Okay, just anybody who is either dealing with or a survivor or is dealing with breast cancer.
Yes.
And then I think there's one question. I'm sorry, Eric, to jump in.
Yep.
Do you need any volunteers?
Yes, we always need volunteers. We love people to be able to share their skills with us, like photography or whatever they're interested in. And yes, we're always looking for help making quilts, just all kinds of things that are going on. IT stuff, all kinds of things.
Wonderful. Couple more thanks in the chat as well. Thanks, Bobby. And
Appreciate it.
Christine asked, are the officers paid?
No, we're all volunteers.
All volunteers. Awesome. Perfect.
So
every
thanks so much
dollar
for.
we
Oh, I'm sorry.
receive, every dollar we receive goes to our women, and it's a wonderful feeling to be able to help them. We've got 3 new women this month, and they showed up at Denny's real quick. I'm sorry, and all women surrounded them and took them in. It was just a beautiful thing. 25 women supporting.
So is that the best way for folks to come to the Denny's meeting? Do you think, is that a good entree for folks to join or be part of the group?
It's best if they call our number, and then we can set up a meeting, because we meet by appointment since we're volunteers. And then I could talk to them privately, and then yes, they can join everything.
Christine asked, where can we get brochures? Are there brochures at your offices or?
Yes, and also at Caphrodite's, Christine, or I can meet. Yes. Would love to mail you some if you let me know. Send me your info and I'll get you some, or meet you at the office.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, Sylvia, thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. It's great to learn about these new groups that have been in existence for a lot of years, and appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you, and I appreciate getting the word out if you know someone who needs, support.
Thank you. Have a good evening. So next we're excited to be joined now by Assembly Member Steve Bennett, who's been had a very busy last 2 years in Sacramento. Before being elected to the Assembly in 2020, most of us remember Steve as a longtime Ventura County Supervisor representing Ventura and Ojai. And I'm old enough to remember him when he was actually on the City Council here. But much of the open space we enjoy today is a direct result of work Steve and the Legion of Volunteers did nearly 3 decades ago to preserve the hillsides and agricultural land from development. And so rather than taking up more of his time and giving his bio, let's hear from Assemblyman Bennett. I saw you just joined earlier, so if you could please take it away.
Hey, great. Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate this invitation and the opportunity to connect with you guys. And nice to see the Midtown Community Council still active and thriving. And it's the essence of what makes a community when people get together and try to address the issues and stuff. So I know that it attracts a certain kind of personality, and you guys have to work at it to hold yourselves together. And that's what you should be most complimented for, is finding ways to work together to address issues when you agree, when you don't agree, and all of that. So my compliments. And I really do enjoy this kind of presentation more than anything else in terms of community outreach and those kind of things. So you mentioned open space. So I'm really happy to announce that, many of us were heavily involved in trying to save the hillsides when they had over the 3,000 homes that they proposed to build on the hillsides. And when the voters turned that down, of course, the cry was, well, if that's what you want, you should buy it. And out of that came the Ventura Hillside Conservancy, and now it's the Ventura Land Trust. It evolved into the Ventura Land Trust. And they approached me around January about this quiet possibility they had to buy the Mariano property. And we went to work up in Sacramento to try to come up with supplemental funding to help them both acquire it, but also to put in the proper infrastructure for it, and to some extent the other properties that the Land Trust is acquiring. So really happy to announce that just before we went on our break at the end of June, we got into the budget, and we have approved the $7 million for the Land Trust to be able to complete the purchase of the Mariano property and do all of the infrastructure, not all of, but all that they can, infrastructure improvements. So we can all finally be legal as we hike up to 2 trees, which I know a few of you guys, I've seen you up there, and know that you joined me in doing something illegal. And so it's nice to make ourselves legal. So that's $7 million that we were able to get. I was fortunate to be able to get a number of other budget requests. You know, the state budget last year and this year has had a significant surplus, but that surplus is a very temporary thing. It's all based on capital gains from the stock market doing so well. And so now that the stock market has taken a significant turn down, we will see the surpluses disappear relatively quickly. I don't think it'll disappear completely next year, but the year after that, we will see it because there's a significant delay. If somebody bought a stock for $20 and it went up to 100, and then the stock market drops $40, takes it back to 60. Still, when they sell that stock, there's going to be a capital gains involved. And we've had such an explosion in the stock market, there'll still be capital gains. That's my own projection, but we will see. So with regards to the budget, I'll pass on a few things. You know, because we had the significant surplus, what we tried to do was focus it completely on, as much as possible, I shouldn't say completely, but as much as possible on one-time expenditures. And excuse me, but I'm running so fast that I threw this jacket on when I shouldn't. It's just too warm in here, right? So one-time expenditures, and that's part of what gave me a leg up in terms of trying to get the money for the Land Conservancy, because it wasn't something that was going to have ongoing operations and maintenance costs. But we did put significant increase in funding for education, and California 10 years ago was 48th in the country in terms of education funding, 48th. And now we're in the top 15. And the reason I don't give you an exact number is it's a little hard to tell as people are doing their budgets, whether we're 14 or 12 or whatever, but we're clearly in the top 15 and might be in the top 10. That's a huge increase in funding and a huge improvement. And given the challenges that we have to educate a population that has so many different languages, so many different ethnic groups here, et cetera, those funds are desperately needed to do a good job. I still would like to push to try to make sure we get real bang for our dollars, or the education dollars that we invest. That's a long-term effort. The education system is a huge system to try to affect significant change in, and you have to take that one step at a time in terms of trying to make that happen. In terms of my own legislation, things that I think have some relevance to you is the number one issue I'm working on is water. I think we're really missing the boat here in California by not getting better prepared for what I believe is aridization that is taking place in the Southwest. But we, I think, are foolish if we are not preparing for aridization. If we get lucky and we're wrong, great. But if we're right and we don't prepare for it, it's going to have enormous impacts on our economy, on our environment, on our quality of life here in Southern California. I feel a little bit like I'm fighting a lonely battle on that. Everybody else has been so frustrated trying to move water legislation that virtually no one's trying to move significant big bills that would change the equation on water in California. Being new, I thought, and being where I am in my career, I'm not trying to become the next Secretary of State or run for another office. I just want to see how much good I can get done for California in the whatever time the voters let me stay there. So I thought, well, I'm going to try. And we came up with a water bill. You know how in the Central Valley, they're overdrafting those aquifers. Well, while they're overdrafting those aquifers, the state did create back in 2014. That was the last time any significant water bill passed in the California legislature, signed by the governor. They passed what's called SGMA, which is to establish groundwater agencies to try to stop the overdrafting of all of those water basins that have caused, in some places 20 and 30 feet of subsidence and all of the complications that come with that. It's literally in the Central Valley right now, just a race to the bottom. Who could put the deepest wells in to keep their water supply going? So there has been, it is a stunning statistic. Since 2014, those overdrafted basins where we have to get those basins to decrease their pumping because we're overdrafting them and it's not sustainable. Instead of decreasing their pumping, 6,000 new wells have gone into those overdrafted basins. And the water agencies that we created don't have the authority to stop those new wells from going in. Only the counties can say no. And the counties have just taken a position that these are ministerial approvals. If you meet the standards, you're approved. There's no review, no environmental review, nothing. They just approve these things. So what I'm trying to do is empower those water agencies to be able to say, no, we can't. These new wells are not going to help us get into sustainable yield. Well, you would think that I was asking for the firstborn child of the people that are pumping water. Been an enormous battle back, and everybody said I'll get killed in the first committee. The first committee is sort of the water committee where these bills are supposed to go and die. But I literally had to talk like a riverboat gambler. I needed 8 votes. I had 7. And somebody who was on the other side, I pointed out that they were being lied to. And when they checked and found out they were being lied to, gave me a courtesy vote just to get it out of committee. Subsequent to that, we got it out of 2 more committees in the assembly. And then on the assembly floor, it was a very close battle, but we were able to get it off the assembly floor with 1 vote to spare. It then went to the Senate, and it passed the first committee in the Senate, which people thought likely would pass. But in the second committee, the chairman of the committee came out against the bill. Flat no, we don't want to do this. She represents the big water pumpers. And most of the time, that's the end of your bill. If the chairman doesn't want it, the other committee members don't want to vote against the chairman's recommendation because the chairman can kill their bills too. But in spite of the chair voting against it, it's a 5-member committee. We spent days hustling and trying to lean on and getting the right groups to lean on, but we ended up getting 3 votes. So it got out 3-2. And now people are taking us serious that, hey, we actually can potentially move a water bill. We still have 1 more committee in the Senate. Then we have to get it off the floor of the Senate. Those are both going to be difficult. Then it'll have to come back to the Assembly to accept the changes. And then it goes to the governor for signing. But it'll be the first change, and it's a significant change, to have the water agencies not be able to stop new wells from going in means they're very ineffective at doing what they're supposed to do. So hopefully that'll happen. So that's water. And I have been able to push through with Monique Lamone the fairgrounds bill on the gun shows. And I know Dan is there. I saw Dan just applauding and has been fighting the good fight there. We also, because of the recent Uvalde violence, got a bill that every year has been blocked, and that was to ban gun shows at all fairgrounds. But I carried that bill in the Assembly. It's not my bill, but the senator who wrote the bill asked me to carry it in the Assembly, and we got it off the Assembly floor. So we're going to have some significant movement, at least on that. And there are 6 gun bills that have moved through the legislature, and they're a package. And I think we're all proud that we're at least able to do something when it comes to gun bills. With regards to abortion, at a community meeting like this, you may be in different places, but I will report that there is a constitutional amendment that is working its way through the legislature. It requires a 2/3 vote to go on to the ballot. Goes on to the ballot, then the citizens will get to vote on whether they want to amend the California Constitution to protect their right to an abortion. And there's a controversy out there that this means abortion no matter what. And most of the legal experts in Sacramento say, no, that's not true. Just like you have free speech, but you don't get to go into a movie theater and yell fire. The state can put reasonable regulations on abortions, and particularly late-term abortions. The Supreme Court's definition in the past has been abortions before the fetus becomes viable. So we will see what happens with that, and we'll see what the voters do with that. But those are significant pieces of legislation. In terms of housing, the focus has changed. In years past, the focus was all on trying to force local governments to rezone and force them to have more housing. Now, this is much more on funding and creating actual affordable housing packages to be put forward. My own view, and I'd love to always get input from you guys, but my own view is we don't need more market rate housing. Market rate housing is what's causing the problem. What we need affordable housing, and that means building a different stock of housing and having different financing and different regulations for it. So I see Councilmember Halter on, and I know there's a general plan update that people are talking about moving through. I know some people are talking about, trying to move SOAR property out of SOAR protection. And certainly at a minimum, I'm not saying I'm even in favor of that at all, but at a minimum, if property is going to be rezoned for development, it ought to be with the restrictions that it addresses the core problem, which is affordable housing. So you could build, everybody says supply and demand. That's just not. It's just so much more complicated than this. Ventura County could build 5,000 more condos and not move the needle at all in terms of affordability in the long run, because the demand is so overwhelming to live in a beautiful coastal area like this. So what we have to do, I think, is be creative and find ways to target the housing that we do build for the workforce that is here that can't afford it. People that are driving long ways, but they work here. All of our current workforce deserves to have first shot at truly affordable housing. And I'm willing to partner with local governments. And that's the position I've been taking at the state. And I'm happy that a number of my legislators joined me in trying to come up with more funding for truly affordable housing and not just throw ourselves at this market rate housing issue that is out there. I'll give you a couple other quick things. I know that you guys may have some questions, et cetera, that you want to ask about, but I have, I'm one of the leaders in the legislature on trying to, as we make this conversion from a carbon economy to a carbonless economy, in the transportation sector, all of the energy and all of the focus is on battery technology. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Battery technology makes a lot of sense, but we shouldn't put all of our eggs in battery technology by itself. Who knows what kind of problems we're going to have with battery technology from the standpoint of recycling batteries, from the standpoint of rare earth minerals that you have to get, from environmental impacts of lithium mining, the challenges trying to get cobalt, what will happen if people corner the market in those areas, et cetera. And when you think about the scale of our conversion that we have to make, the number of batteries that we're going to have to produce, it just dwarfs, I think, my imagination, at least, in terms of trying to understand that. So I believe if you think, and I look back to the 1950s, and many of us are old enough to remember the recent documentary that came out about how the car companies killed the electric car, but they bought up the patents. They didn't want the competition. But how different would America and how different would the world be if since 1950 internal combustion engines were competing with electric engines, electric cars? We would have a very different equation in front of us right now. We'd be much further along in terms of the technology. I think we need the same thing with hydrogen. I think we should have hydrogen as an alternative. Doesn't have to be the dominant one, but we should keep it alive so that we have that energy source to go to also if we have problems, if we have challenges, or if the hydrogen technology happens to advance more rapidly and have some breakthroughs that the battery technology doesn't get to have. On the other hand, battery technology may continue to be the dominant one. That's fine, but that's the big push that I am making in Sacramento. And where I am having success is at the heavy duty side of this. And so my view is as we go with semi trucks and we try to use hydrogen in the ports have joined in and are supportive of my efforts, because the ports right now, we're trying to electrify the ports. But, you know, every time we have a brownout, the ports have to tell the ships, slow down, because we don't have electricity here for you now at this point in time. And the ports desperately want to have the hydrogen backup option there. And the technology is relatively straightforward and simple. With gas prices now going up as high as they have, it's starting to become more competitive with current gas prices. The real issue with hydrogen is trying to get the cost of creating green hydrogen down and trying to have that move forward. But my view is this, and it's been a very interesting battle in Sacramento. I've been trying to say when we build truck stops that have hydrogen, they also need to build the facilities so cars can access that hydrogen. Just like when diesel cars started to hit in the United States, you could pull into a truck stop and you could fill up your diesel car. And then eventually you started seeing diesel at the local gas stations. That's what we should do. But there's been a fascinating resistance by the hydrogen car producers. Don't want to associate their hydrogen cars with the truck stops. And it's been a fascinating battle, but we are moving forward, and I feel confident in the next year or two that we'll be successful in terms of being able to do that. I have some bills, some environmental bills in terms of expanding the number of products that particularly the state has to purchase in terms of making sure they're purchasing environmentally sensitive products. I'm doing some work on foster children to try to make sure foster children, the financing for foster children is appropriate. And the state of California, finally, I would offer to you that I think the state legislature is an interesting mix of people who really care about the state and want to do the right thing, and another mix of people that really care about getting reelected and will do almost anything to do that. And the daily battle is sort of to try to get those people in the middle to swing. Everybody has sometimes when their district is just so difficult that they have to take that into consideration. But most of the time, we have a significant group of people that are willing to do what's best for California. So I really welcome this opportunity to hear a little bit from you guys too, before we reach our deadline. And I could easily talk for another couple of hours about what's going on. If you don't have questions or don't have topics you'd like to hear about or anything, but I don't want to have the politician's disease of continuing to talk on. So there we go, Greg. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm going to send it to Eric, but I know there's one question that we were asked earlier. Can you address the issue with the charges that the electric companies want to put on solar? And sorry, I don't know the specifics. Deanne, do you know a little bit better on that one? And then I'm going to let Eric take away. You got a ton of questions in the chat.
Sure. So in terms of solar, I want to give you the background so you get there. I mean, for quite some time, there was no support for solar at all. And then finally, there was a big push in the legislature to say, we have to do something to try to jumpstart solar. And it makes sense. You want to jumpstart solar if you want to have more renewable energy and make the switch from a carbon economy to a carbonless economy. When they did it in a way that the power companies really are pretty frustrated with it, because what the power companies are finding is that the people that switched over to solar sort of became exempt from paying for the infrastructure to get the energy to their houses and keep the grid reliable. Because even with a lot of people on solar, you still have to have a reliable grid for everybody. And where this became the biggest argument, the most compelling argument, was the solar was being adopted to a heavy extent by high-income people, at least people above average. Low-income communities were not adopting solar. They weren't putting solar on their home. So the infrastructure cost of the grid was being transferred gradually over to people that were paying sort of those full rates. And it's because the way the structure was set up in terms of how you were reimbursed. So they've been trying to come up with a reimbursement plan that gives you an incentive to put in solar, but not at the expense of transferring the cost to low-income people and the remaining customers. And certainly part of what this budget surplus has allowed the state to do is it's allowed us to funnel a lot more money to low-income communities to help them do primarily regional solar. So they tasked the California Public Utilities Commission, which is an interesting independent body, with the appointments from the governor. The governor has huge influence there. They tasked them with coming up with new rates, and what they came up with were rates that would very much disincentivize people for putting in solar. It just, there wouldn't be a financial gain. You would do it because you wanted to be green. You would do it maybe because you wanted to have the reliability, but the incentive just wasn't there. And partially it's because they were putting on a huge, fixed cost charge, for people, as they converted. Well, the governor, who is, who's very good at sort of having a political antenna, saw that was going to cause lots of challenges, and he asked the Public Utilities Commission to go back to the drawing board. I've been lobbying the Public Utilities Commission to try to come up with an appropriate fixed charge, for everybody, and potentially have that fixed charge minimized for low income people. But it's not easy. It's not, if you just look at it from a solar standpoint, you want to be able to put in solar. You want to get full credit for all the energy you put back into the system. And the calculation of the grid cost, the infrastructure cost, is not an easy calculation to make. So there are some well-intentioned people on the staff at the Public Utilities Commission trying to get it right, but there are enormous politics, and some of the biggest hitters at the Public Utilities Commission are Southern California Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric. So, Sandag down there. So they have a bigger megaphone, and they get listened to quite a bit. The other thing I would offer to you is think back to the days of Enron. And Enron came about because the state legislature and the governor signed a deregulation bill without thinking it through very well. And so there is a pretty heavy reluctance to overrule the Public Utilities Commission, pretty heavy reluctance to sort of strike out and go, this is the right thing, because nobody wants to go back to the days of creating an unreliable grid. So it's going to take some real genuine, conversation, thought, et cetera. And these community choice aggregates like we have here in Ventura County are also a threat to the independent operators, because they have long-term contracts, to purchase things. And as more and more people migrate to the community choice aggregates, again, the remaining customers are stuck with the paying for the long-term contracts, et cetera. So they have a strong advocacy, and it's a fascinating thing. You have the powerful utilities, and then you have the social justice people combining sort of in an alliance to say the solar rooftop subsidy has been inappropriately generous. I hope that that helps answer the question.
Thank you. Eric, take it away. I know you've got a ton of questions. Are you still time certain you're going to leave at 8:05 or can we keep you for a couple minutes?
I have to leave at 8:05, but I'll
Okay.
push it. I'll
Okay.
push it. I'll push it.
Go ahead, Eric.
How about that? I'll push it day 10. Here we go.
Okay, Eric, go ahead. I'll shut up.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about not having any questions. We have lots. So I'll do my best here, people, but please be patient. If we can't get to your question, I hope you understand it's not out of malintent. We have a lot.
And let me say this, I'm happy to come back for another session if you want to do that. All right. So,
Wonderful. Thank you. So the first question I have from Karen was about affordable housing, which you spoke a lot about, but specifically, is there anything in the budget for housing in the new budget?
yes, there is. There's quite a bit. And I don't have the details in front of me, but my staff can certainly get that. And I see Atticus on my staff, so he will be happy to provide to you guys the specific, dollar amounts and bills and budget items and stuff that are out there for affordable housing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And Karen, keep up your good work on that. Right.
Yeah. Yes, there are lots of compliments in here. I'm going to spare you reading those because you're getting a lot of them in here. But
come on, take your time, read them nice and loud. Right?
So the next question from let's see, trying to go through here is about gun control and what about requiring registration with information available to the public and requiring insurance on bills for gun control?
Both being talked about, both trying to, those kind of things surface. Sometimes they get out of committee and sometimes they don't. It's quite a few bills, but still being talked about.
Wonderful. Let's see. Do you have any idea on dates when specifically AB 61769 will be signed by the governor? That's from Beth. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, well, Beth, I have 2,000 bills. I don't memorize numbers anymore. So tell me what that number does.
Yeah, feel free to chime in, Beth. I'm not sure either. I should have looked it up.
Oh, sorry, there. The bill about gun shows at the fairgrounds. Do you know when that? I know it's on the governor's desk. Do you know when that would be signed?
I don't have any specifics. I don't have any specifics on that. We went dark on right at the end of June as we left. And so we haven't heard anything since we passed all those bills and sent them over to the governor. But I feel pretty confident about the Ventura County one. Right.
And Dan asked a very similar question. Atticus provided an answer in the chat and said if they were signed, they would theoretically go into effect January 1st. Is that correct? Yeah. That's
right. Because it requires a 2/3 vote to have urgency. Right.
Jeff asked a question about SOAR regulations. Don't they require that some limited SOAR protected land be converted to housing only if it is regulated for affordable housing?
Is that a question or a statement?
I think it's a question. Jeff, chime in if I'm missing the interpretation here.
No, I think it's a statement, Steve. I mean, when the SOAR renewal happened, one of the provisions was that you could convert up to, I think, 40 acres of urban adjacent SOAR to housing, but only if it had a high level of affordability requirement.
That's right. That's right. That's one of the exceptions that we wrote in specifically to try to address the affordable housing issue and stuff. Yeah.
Kate has a housing related. Oh, go ahead.
I read the exact language and stuff, so somebody needs to check it out carefully, and I'm sure you have, Jeff. Right? Go ahead. Sorry, there, Eric.
No, you're fine. Kate has a housing related question, and it's one of particular interest, especially it's kind of a hot topic here in Ventura about how we can discourage. Is there any way to discourage second homes and Airbnb or vacation rentals?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's the scourge of California, because here we claim we have this terrible affordable housing crisis, and we do, and we claim that the solution is more supply, and that's not quite an accurate statement. It's more supply of affordable units, not just more supply. And then we turn around and we take all these second dwelling units, et cetera, and we convert them to tourist housing. there ought to be a law, you know, and but trying to get that law to pass is just a really heavy lift. It is a powerful industry up there. And you know, I won't keep lobbing this over and over again, but I do say this whenever everybody's asking about this. Big money, corrupt money, doesn't buy legislation. You don't see a whole lot of like sweetheart, you know, bills passing for the insurance company or the banks or anybody that's got a lot of money. Big money blocks legislation. They stop change. And so if you want to get out there and try to, you know, pass some laws against, you know, this conversion over to short-term rentals, it is, you know, you run into a buzzsaw of people who are dependent upon that money for their reelection, dependent upon that money to build their campaign account for running for Secretary of State or auditor and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's really difficult, but that is one that my staff has on our list to try to see if we think we can find a path to deal with that. But in my conversations with all the legislators, you know, getting their, you know, just recently I've asked, and there hasn't been there have just a little bit like water. Everybody's going, you can't get there from here, you know, kind of thing. So it's a real problem. Local governments, you know, try to pass some regulations, but it's difficult for them to have the resources to do the enforcement. The people that are doing the short-term rentals find all kinds of ways to slip around the 30-day, you know, residency issue, so it's very difficult, but it is a problem I'd like to spend more time working on.
And Kate, I would encourage you. I know locally there's a strong push. Terry Foley and the Pierpont Community Council is trying to make a strong local push for local regulations akin to what some of the other cities surrounding us, Carpinteria, Oxnard, have been able to do. And he's looking for help to help push it locally. So I think this is about the time I saw Marilyn's hand come up in the chat. So she has her hand up, so I'm gonna throw it over to Marilyn.
Okay, I'll be real quick. This could be an outdated question because I didn't have time to research. Is there still an open aquifer of water channel coming down from North California to south to help supply our water?
Yes, the State Water Project still is delivering water.
I worry about it being exposed to possible contamination or, you know, vandals or something to taint it.
Well, I think the infrastructure of the United States is vulnerable to terrorist attacks in many, many ways and in many places. And I hate to speculate on, you know, what I would do, and you know, but I think we're very vulnerable, and that's why I think. And by the way, I'll make this announcement. We're in September. I'm going to host a water town hall at Ventura County Government Center. I'm going to do it in conjunction with the Ventura County, and it'll be in the boardroom, and it'll be Atticus might be able to help me dig out the date of it again so we can announce that. But my push is local communities, particularly like Ventura, that are right here at the coast. We have to find ways to be resilient with our water and not dependent upon the State Water Project alone. Earthquakes, terrorist attacks, sabotage, but most likely aridization. I mean, when you change the snowpack in the Sierra Nevada mountains, you change the water equation in California, not a little bit, a lot. So as we get more rain, and then that we don't have the ability to use the snowpack as the reservoir, and the ability to have that trickle down and supply for long periods of time. You don't have the groundwater recharge. It is going to be a real problem, you know, for everybody, and it's going to be a real fight. And I just think communities, particularly Western Ventura County, we ought to find some ways to make sure we're as self-sufficient and as reliable as possible. And that means having lots of different sources, because you don't know which one will be working or not working, and where you might have a problem, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know I can also speak locally here again. Councilmember Halter, former Councilmember Weir are doing a lot to help protect and promote our local water supply, which is a big help.
Great.
Next,
Is Councilmember Weir on here? I don't see her.
she is. I see her name on here. So
Oh, she's not gracing us with her face here today. Right. All right. Hello, Councilmember Weir, along with Councilmember Halter. Right.
Next question, an energy question. Is the state looking at REACH or all electric adoption in the next building code cycle? Essentially elimination of gas or fossil fuels in building code.
Yes, the state is. Right.
Yep. Okay.
The gas company's not happy about it, but
next question I think came out of our newsletter, and it has to do with schools. With schools having lowering enrollments, are there funding mechanisms to help?
yes, they've changed the funding mechanism. We have more money, and they've also changed the funding mechanism, and they are very aware that this is a problem and an ongoing problem going forward. But they have changed the funding mechanism so that you can use your last 3 years instead of just your most recent, because not only is there declining enrollment, COVID also just really hammered enrollment in addition, as more people, went to homeschooling and that kind of stuff. So they have created a significant adjustment in the funding formula.
Thank you. We've got a couple more here. I know you're running right up against it. I think that you kind of addressed some of the bills that might be sitting on the governor's desk or your recess. So I think you already addressed that. The next one I see in here, but thank you, Karen, for the question, Karen Peters. Do you talk, and if I didn't answer, if I passed over you, I apologize. Can you talk about your idea for a Trails Commission from Christy Weir?
Oh, yeah. I know Christy was excited about that when I announced it at the Harmon Canyon dedication that we had. I love the idea, but it got shot down, not the funding, but the creation of the commission. So I still have the possibility, we'll know in August whether my request for funding that could be used to improve our trails gets approved. But the bill, the request that included creating the equivalent of a coastal commission for the trails did get shot down. All right, legislature, the top budget leaders just said, hey, they're not going to create that. And part of the issue is we are likely to have a severe budget deficit 2 years from now. And when we have that severe budget deficit 2 years from now, everybody's going to look back and say, anything that created ongoing cost is something that they're going to regret. And so if you create a Trails Commission, you're going to create ongoing cost. Just the staffing of the commission and all that stuff. I love the idea. I think it's particularly as we're trying to do 30-30, which for those of you that don't know, it's trying to preserve 30% of the land in California by 2030. It's land and state coastal areas. As we're trying to do all that, I think a commission that would be trying to manage and look at and make maximum use of that and deal with all the regulatory, challenges that might come with that could be really valuable. But it died on the altar of no operation and maintenance, or very, very, very little operation and maintenance approval.
Understood.
Thanks for remembering, Christy.
Well, thank you for the questions. It is 8:05, and I want to be respectful of your time. There are a lot more in here. We're probably going to have you back, I guess, and ask some more. So
it would be my pleasure. I really, really enjoyed talking with you guys.
Thank you so much for coming. It was really great.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. So, okay, so we are now in the next portion of our meeting for community announcements, and I'm going to call on Doug Halter, if you don't mind giving us a brief update on what's going on in the city. You guys have been equally as busy as they have been up in Sacramento.
We've been very busy, but it's hard to follow our assemblyman. He does an excellent job and always has. So I really appreciate that. But I appreciate a few minutes here to kind of share what's going on locally. First and foremost, I would just say is that our GPAC meetings are continuing. Our next meeting is on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. And it's focused on active transportation. So that should be a really good meeting for a lot of us to attend and give our input to. We're still working on, there's the housing element. We had discussions on Monday night regarding the climate action and resiliency plan and energy action plan. And those will be coming forward in September and November. So I look forward to that. And we just approved our budget, and part of the budget, one of the things that I'm excited about is that we did put money in for city beautification. And so it's going to be more of basically a hit team to help take care of things that are unsightly, ways to kind of raise the bar, raise the standard. They call it a BAM team. BAM it kind of reminds me of Batman, but but nonetheless, it's whether it's city beautification with trimming trees, weeding medium strips better, addressing graffiti on a more aggressive standpoint, picking up litter. It's just across the board raising the standards. And so I'm looking forward to that making a difference in our community and our quality of life. Obviously, the big issue is, and always will be, is our housing element. And we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. And we spent 2 meetings back to back with the GPAC going over potential zoning possibilities across our city. The reality is, as our Assemblyman said, is that housing is a very complex issue. It's not nearly as clear cut as one might think on the surface. And the real issue is we focused on, we know that land costs are a lot of money in California. We know that. We also know that about 20 to 30% of the cost of every new home is the process and the holding costs of actually building that home. And most of us, being in the trades myself, I see that every day. And I know how much money is spent. And I like to say it's all to protect us. It's all about doing those studies, those reports. And I think a lot of us know that in reality, there is a lot of waste. There's a lot of resources that could go towards making a more beautiful project, something that's better fitting in to what we love about our community and enhances our community, or making more affordable housing. And I wanted to mention that regardless of what we do in the future as far as zoning, we have made a mess out of the normal bell curve of housing that would normally exist. And that's part of my love for, especially downtown and Midtown Ventura, is the mixture of housing that we have, is that we house people of all economic levels, people who are just starting out, as well as people who have become very successful. And we oftentimes are neighbors right next to each other. And I think it adds a lot of enrichment to our city. So without getting too much more into it, just know that what we can do as government is set policy and fees or processes and zoning that encourages what we want for our community, but also encourages people to invest to build the housing that we do need. And we all know we desperately need affordable housing. California ranks 49th out of 50 states for housing per capita. And that's why you hear that number, 3 million or 3.5 million housing units short. But one thing we could do to help reduce the cost of housing today is to help reduce what the process is and how long it takes to secure the permits, the permission necessary to build that housing. That's 20 to 30% right there. The codes are extremely onerous. Every time somebody touches a plan, they add they always have to design something to minimize the liability of that particular aspect of the project. And so I halfway kind of joke that at some point we may end up living back in teepees again, because it's going to be so unaffordable to build housing. So while the housing we see going up now, I would agree, is not affordable housing for the most part. We got to look at why it costs what it does cost to build that housing today. So that's just part of what we need to look at in looking at the bigger picture. And I want to remind people that government doesn't build housing, other than the Housing Authority, who's doing a phenomenal job with providing housing that we desperately need on the entry level. But the reality is it's investors, it's people, it's the private sector. That's who builds the housing. What government does is encourages people to do that. So that's just one little side note and something for us to continue looking at as we move forward. Moving on, though, to a couple other issues is we did settle with some of the labor unions at City Hall and with a new contract for the next year. So that was exciting. We're also even more exciting is that we're actually filling a lot of our vacant positions at City Hall. As you know, through COVID, it's been overwhelming, to say the least, that we've had a lot of openings. And along the lines of community development, I know a lot of us have spent a lot of time on the Matrix report on streamlining processes that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was just talking about. But the Matrix report was really about entitlements and about hearings. That's really the bulk of what that was about. Now we're focused more so on the permit processing system itself. So if any of you want to get those over-the-counter permits again for that retaining wall or that patio cover or replacing your hot water heater, I'm hoping and praying to God that that happens really quickly. That's again over the counter. There are some things over the counter now. The plan is phenomenal. What I've been very actively involved in and very excited and to know that a lot of those results we're expecting to get as soon as this month in July, and it will continue to get better each month as we go on. I know I'm taking too much time, but I wanted to mention that here it is almost 5 years later since the Thomas fire. We have just under 50% of the homes that have returned for various reasons. So I'm hoping that we're going to do a big study, a big report on where we're at, why we're there, what we can do to return the rest of our neighbors back to our neighborhoods. And other than that, we do have the fire department has embarked on their outreach to the community to get community input on what you would see the fire department doing better for the future of what we now call pretty much an all hazards department, a department where only a small percentage of what the calls that they go on is actually about fire. And so how can we better deliver those services? How can we do it more efficiently? What would you see as a citizen of our community, and to help give your input and your fingerprint on what our fire department looks like in the future? So that outreach is happening right now. And some people may not know that, but they're going from fire station to fire station, inviting people in. And I participated in a couple of those, and they're pretty fun. And it's great to see people. Right now, it's just great to see people, period. So other than that, I'll leave it open for a few questions. I know there's a lot more going on. Oh, there's an election going on. Obviously, it doesn't impact me this time, but it's District 1, 1, 3, 1, 4, 5, and 6. Districts 1, 4, 5, and 6. I think the filing period opens July 18th, if I'm not mistaken, and goes through sometime in August. So just know that there's going to be 4 council members that would be for re-election or for new people to come onto our council. Okay, with that, if there's any questions, I know there's a lot more going on, but I would like to be respectful of your time as well.
Thanks so much, Doug. We do have a couple questions. I'll follow up here, but again, several thank yous. Karen Flock asked, can you talk a little bit about the community survey?
Oh yeah, great. There's a community survey that has been done, and I'm pretty terrible at names. It's a pretty well-known outfit that did the survey. That was presented to us on Monday night. And honestly, the thing that stood out the most to me is the fact that the unhoused or homeless issues in our community was really the top issue. That was the top concern of people in Ventura. And I don't think that surprises most of us who have witnessed what's gone on, not just in our community, but across Southern California. But it's an excellent report. It should be online on the city's website. If it's not, please text me and let me know, and I'll make sure it is. But it's interesting. For me, it was more about validating what I think a lot of us that I see on the screen tonight, what we probably, a lot of us pretty much felt or knew. It just gave validation. And it seemed to be a very fair a margin of error. I think was 3% is what they calculated. And it did seem like it was conducted in a very good way. So it was nice to have that backup information to move forward as we continue looking at council priorities, budgeting. We finished the budget, as you know. But we will be budgeting again soon for next year.
Wonderful. Beth asked a question that you answered about how many homes have been rebuilt that were lost in the Thomas fire. So thank you for that. Jeff had a good point about government's role in affordable housing, which is inclusionary zoning ordinance, and that's one of the things I know you guys are working on. Let's see, another question popped up. It bothered me. From Kate. It bothers me that we don't have a single citywide elected official. Would that be possible?
You know, that would take a change of the charter, is my understanding. And I also like that concept. I liked it when we went to districts. I was hoping that the outcome would be that we would have one, whether it's an elected mayor. That's something that I think needs to be looked at some point. It's that we've had our hands pretty full. I mean, and I think Christy can attest to how much comes before our desk. But between the fire, COVID, and now coming out of COVID, it hasn't been our highest priority, but it is something I know has to come back around. Most of us, I think the fear of having parochialism or creating fiefdoms that some of us may have had when we went to districts, I don't think that's materialized for the most part. I think most of us, well, only on the second round of council members, but we really have kept the entire city's perspective on what's in the best interest of our entire city. But it did make it easier, I think, for our constituents, for those of you who vote for us, to reach out and get a return phone call and get an answer. Like I've been pretty actively trying to help with a few of you. Elizabeth, I know might be on the call today, I can't tell, but and a few others about looking at traffic on Poli and Foothill and trying to do some traffic calming, parking issues that we have as some of our corridors become more successful and busier, as some of the restaurants or some of the businesses entice more people to visit and use their services. We're going to have to really be looking at things like parking and looking at active transportation and alternative modes for people to get to and fro.
I know I can speak a little bit to the active transportation. Okay. The city is doing a lot there. I have a quick question for you. And it kind of comes on the heels of your predecessor's champion of a historic survey for the city. I know the city did some work on that. I guess I'm kind of curious where it's at.
That's over this next coming year, between the end of 22 and 23. I know that the historic survey is up on the list to be done and completed. What that's going to do is give us a baseline of what buildings, what properties have historical significance. It probably won't do a whole lot about what properties go to historic commission or historic committee for review to see whether or not there should be a historic study done. But it would be great for us to know. My first love when I came to this community is historic preservation. That's actually what attracted me to Ventura, is the fact that it's one of California's oldest cities, and the history here is extremely rich. So I know that survey is going to be done within the next year. That's what's on the game plan, as is looking at short-term rentals, as is looking at inclusionary housing. All of those are on the list, and we're slowly making it through it. And I'm hoping that those schedules speed up as we continue to fill empty roles at City Hall. So.
Wonderful, thank you. Cherie has her hand up with a question.
All right. I don't.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, there you are. Hey.
Hi. I wanted to ask you about, it's between Catalina Street and Seaward. We have the apartments being built there on Main Street.
Yeah.
And right now we have had one lane. And it's one lane before you get that on the west-hand side. It's already one lane. And so we're just continuing one lane a little further. Yeah. But I pulled out of Taco Bell today. I went to Taco Bell.
Is that open?
What?
Is that open now?
Yes, it's open now.
Don't excite me, okay? But
yes. But anyway, the corner is really, really blind there. And because the building's really close to the street. And I'm just wondering, is it too late, or would they be willing to re-look at, and have you looked at it? If maybe, I mean, the one lane, my son went to Ventura High School. It didn't seem to be a problem there. And I think that Ventura High has an opportunity to be just such a great hub for walking and biking. Would they consider making that, just keeping that one lane and making it safer? And could that change, or is it too late? Can we do anything?
There's a plan. I know that there's a plan about what type of parking would happen in front of those new buildings. I don't know enough about it to really answer it intelligently, but I will say that I do know with those two developments, that there is a plan for parking and some traffic considerations. I know that the more we could do to get traffic back onto Thompson, and of course, in an organized way on Main, would be better for Foothill and Poli, but we also have to make sure that Main and Thompson are safe, and that we don't block any view lines, and that it's safe for active transport, people riding their bikes or walking. So I don't really have that answer, but I will look into it, Sheree, just to see what their plan is. But I noticed that too every time I pass, and I was hoping once all the scaffolding and everything comes down, that it's gonna open things back up a bit.
Yeah, it's very blind, and I'm worried about the safety. And a lot of the kids, what happens is, just so you know, Doug, is they don't cross at the corner. They take the shortest route, and they just cross right at that blind corner at Taco Bell a lot.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Okay.
You know? Okay.
And I will add that I know that the city's active transportation plan is looking at increasing pedestrian safety and active transportation in those corridors. And interestingly enough, they are looking at kind of pop-up events. And it turns out that construction is kind of creating a pseudo pop-up event of how active transportation might work. So it's a good point.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll stay abreast of that, and I'm open to any phone calls, emails, texts anytime if you want me to look into something or make me aware of something you think I may not be aware of. But it's been interesting, and I've learned a lot so far in the last year and a half. Having been involved for many years, I was really surprised at how much the city really does. I mean, so much more than what the obvious was. You know, it's just, I think working together as a community, and we each fill a certain role, the grassroots organizations of the community councils, feeding into providing knowledge and input to their council members, and being active at the podium, I think is helpful, and it gives us better government. So I appreciate it, all of you taking time to be here tonight. And I always look forward to seeing you at the council chambers as well.
Thank you so much, Doug.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug. I know there's a couple last things, Eric. Do you was asked about ranked choice?
Sure.
in
Dan
future
had brought up
elections?
in a question about potential ranked choice in future elections. Is that ever something that the city council would look at, or?
I'm sorry, you say rent choice?
Ranked choice. It's a different style of essentially a voting. Instead of popular vote, voters get a chance to look at ranking, and then there's different ways that works out. But I'm not an expert in it, and I know a little bit about it. But.
Okay, well, sounds like you know more than I know about that. So that's something I'd be interested to look at.
Yeah. I think the state of Maine is actually the first in the country that has used it, even in legislative and congressional seats. So it's an interesting kind of case study.
Interesting. Well, I'll keep my eyes open on that. I may Google that next when this meeting's over. Ranked as in rank 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Interesting.
And Jeff had a quick question about the historic context statement. Is this just a historic context statement citywide? The one that is being looked at.
It is. Yeah.
And Jeff, I is there a draft document for that, Doug? I kind of remember seeing one at some point. Just I don't remember now. It's been a few years, hence why I asked it.
What I'm familiar with is a historic survey that was done 30 years ago or 35 years ago. That's but obviously a lot's happened in 35 years. Right. And that was very focused on the downtown and part of Midtown back then. I hadn't seen the actual draft document, but I know we're going to be seeing that shortly.
I've seen a lot. I could be making stuff up. So
I know there's a lot of reports out there. Okay. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. It's nice seeing you.
All right. Thank you.
So, okay. So the next thing is, do we have any announcements from the board members? I'll put one in quickly just to let everybody know. This coming Monday at 6 o'clock at City Hall, they are going to start debating cannabis dispensary locations. Everybody's going to be making their presentations. This is an opportunity for the public to say yay or nay on particular dispensaries. And so again, that's happening this coming Monday. It starts at 6 o'clock. The deadline to submit letters was yesterday, but you can still feed information to the city. The decision won't be made until August. So this is your opportunity to say if you like a spot or don't. It's a good opportunity. So how about for the rest of the board? Is there any other information or anything you want to bring up?
Greg, I wanted to say that the deadline to submit comments on that topic you just mentioned was Wednesday. If you wanted to show up in the agenda for the meeting on Monday, but you can still go online and fill in the comment form, or of course, always write city council. But
Yeah.
until the
thank you.
22nd, till the 22nd.
Yeah, and I think you can actually, am I correct? I think you can file post after the meeting too. So, you know, if there were things or statements, people can respond to what was said in the meeting. But this is the public's opportunity at this point to shape where the locations or where they want it. So, okay, thank you, Sheree. Is there, does anybody else on the board have any other announcements?
Garden, Loma Vista Garden is
Okay.
now the third Saturday. So this Saturday, we will be at Loma Vista School if anybody wants to come from 9 to 11, working on a beautiful native plant garden on the corner of Mills and Lynn Drive.
Great, and Sheree, that correct? You can show up with a little an hour or for the
Oh
whole
yeah,
time?
you could show up for 30 minutes.
Okay,
Absolutely. And they have gloves and tools if you don't have anything. So, but it's really great because you can, especially like this time of year, the native plants get really overgrown. And so like what I learned from working in the garden is how like that this is the time of year that you trim, and like you don't trim in the spring when the birds want to eat. And anyway, you learn methods on how to take care of your plants.
well, thank you, Sheree. You've really whipped that garden into shape over the last couple of years.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful, and I know it's a passion of yours, and thanks for keeping it going.
Dan,
Yeah, Sheree, I'm sorry, I'll be over there while they're watering our Measure O grant project at Maine and Emma, watering the bushes we planted there.
Oh,
I don't know how many months ago now, 6 months or whatever. But thank you for all the work you've been doing over. And so, we had 5-gallon buckets of water from a neighbor that lives on the corner that's gracious enough. It has great water pressure to go water the shrubs. The city is watering the trees, the gator bags, but for every 2 weeks, we got to go over there and water this thing. So it's workable, you know, it's working out great. Announcement, we had kind of talked about updating about the fairgrounds a little bit. So if anybody has any questions about the fair, it started August 3rd. I found out today we were debating we were going to be able to have fireworks. We'd find a vendor that could have non-plastic going into the ocean, but they weren't weren't able to do the small amount of days that we could afford to do. We're still coming back after 2 years of, you know, with COVID, excuse me, like everybody else. And the budget's a little tight. So won't be having fireworks. So that's great. That's great for you that have sensitive little dogs at home. I appreciate that. Everything else, I think it's going to be a great fit, and hopefully it will just work out wonderful. If you have any questions, you can email or call me.
thanks so much, Dan. Sorry, I haven't been able to help with the watering at Maine and Emma as much.
That's okay.
Okay, perfect. Any other board members, any other things or announcements they want to make? Okay, if not, I want to ask any committee members, do you have any announcements or anything you want to bring up? Okay, Bobby, I see you waving. Please go.
On the second Saturday of each month, we gather at Marina Park and we do a beach cleanup of the park and the beach area. It's this past Saturday, it was especially needed after the 4th of July, as you can imagine. But we do meet, like I say, the second Saturday from 9 to 11. And again, like Cherie, you come for 10 minutes or an hour or all 2 hours. It's fine. We appreciate all the help.
Thank you, Bobby, for organizing that much needed. I'm sure it was a bit of a mess down there.
Oh, yeah, it definitely was.
Any other community announcements? Don't see any.
So, okay, I think we're looking good. So just as a reminder, the Midtown Ventura Community Council won't hold a general meeting in August with the Ventura County Fair taking place. So we'll return on September 8th for our next meeting. The video of this meeting will be up on YouTube this weekend. So please let anyone know who is unable to attend that they can watch it. So thanks for joining us tonight on Zoom, and we will see you in September. So again, thanks for giving up part of your night and appreciate it. So good night.